end up forgetting. My name is Jim Buckley. I'm the Executive Director of University Neighborhood Housing Program. I started with University Neighborhood back in 1989, and I've had the good fortune of being here for for the intervening years. I want to start out with a bunch of thank yous. Thank you first to folks that have donated and supported us in our work. It's very gratifying. We have really, obviously appreciate the support, but we also are deeply appreciative of the fact that the number of people who are supporting us has increased as the years have gone on. So we thank you for that. We thank the people who have participated in our sessions and our forums in the course of these past several months. I also want to thank the board of UNHP, many of whom are on the call right now, and many of the volunteers that have helped us get to the point that we're at this time. And of course, I want to thank the staff of UNHP who have been working on this, and you'll get to meet many of them in the course of the next 45 minutes. This is what we do is the name of our seminar series. And I'll take it as a compliment that only one person commented to me about the name of our series. And it fit perfectly. The comment actually fit perfectly because they said to us that's, when they looked at the list of things that we were doing, they were saying, this is true. This is what you do, and we appreciate it. Whether it was the water and sewer issue when we started working on it back in 1990, believe it or not, whether it's the health insurance issue that we kind of delved into in this past year that we can go into a little deeper at some other point. We work with people in the neighborhood. We work with people in the financial institutions. We work with people in city agencies to identify issues and try to come up with solutions. It has been a busy and informative couple of months in the series of forums that we've had. And as usual, we don't have definitive final answers to all of the problems that have been raised. We have some paths to follow. One of our strengths at UNHP is our persistence. UNHP, we like to describe ourselves as having three different components. Our building and asset management component that deals with hundreds of units that we oversee with the assistance of 2 private managers. Our resource center work, in which people are assisting hundreds and over the course of the past several years, thousands of local residents, many of them in the buildings with which we work, and our research and advocacy components, which has worked on a wide variety of issues and especially in the area of banking, housing code enforcement. Each of our various pieces informs the other's work. And that's why so much of what we talk about resonates with people that may not typically be getting together in the same room. The urgency of emergency rental assistance, concerns about rising property insurance prices and water and sewer policy, bank lending policies, and the importance of bank branches. These are concerns that don't frequently come up from the same organization. We covered a lot of ground in our sessions. And as always, success depends upon the follow-up. We're hoping that you all will stay with us, will join us as we work on following up the various things that have come out of our sessions. And I think I've covered my opening remarks. What I would like to do now is just describe the format. We're going to have, several of our staff people talk about the sessions that we had and describe some of the things that they kind of have taken out of them. And what I'm going to do right now is, oh, and once again, just a reminder that A, this is being recorded, B, that if you have comments or questions, please put them in the chat room. And at the end of the presentations, we'll come back to me and you know, we'll have an opportunity for people to, if people will have anything they want to ask or comment on. And with that, I'm going to shut up and pass the ball over to Cathy.
Great. Thanks, Jim. My name is Clarke, and I want to welcome everyone here today, especially all the other Clarkes on the screen. It's very interesting techno twist today. I'm the Director of Development at UNHP, and I really do want to express a sincere and heartfelt thank you to everyone who has sponsored and donated and participated in what we're calling, you know, our What We Do, UNHP and Mission series of events and fundraiser. Your support is truly vital to what we do. You saw our sponsor logos and lists at the beginning of this webinar. Folks are also listed on the blog, on our website, on our donate page, and we will be sending out the recording as well as a summary post in which we will again be identifying our sponsors. And of course, our sponsors are also listed in this year's pint glass, so nicely designed again by our friends at the Bronx Design Group. And this will be getting to you in the next couple of weeks. University Neighborhood prides itself on being nimble and responsive to emerging issues and the needs in our Bronx community. The type of support that we get through a fundraiser and sponsorships and donations really gives us the financial capacity and flexibility to respond to emerging issues in the way that we think is the most effective. While our mission is pretty straightforward, to create and preserve and improve affordable housing, as well as provide needed resources in our community, the way we carry out that mission, the emerging issues that we respond to, and the detailed ways we choose to work towards that mission as a community-based developer, a Bronx-focused researcher, and a direct service provider is what makes UNHP unique, and it defines what we do. Since May, UNHP has held 6 events that have reached over 225 individuals. Those individuals are English and Spanish speaking community residents, private and nonprofit affordable housing operators, multifamily lenders, nonprofits, and affordable housing partners. I think that, you know, is a good description of the wide array of people that we bring together that Jim highlighted. So this slide that you're seeing now, you know, lists the events that we're considering as part of our What We Do event. And it also has the link to the summary posts that are available on our blog. The events highlighted the way we work towards our mission, but also show the ways that UNHP has been responding to the unfolding economic and health crisis brought about by the pandemic on all levels. From the disruption in the real estate market throughout New York City, our own scramble to stabilize the multifamily rental housing in our own portfolio, to the personal toll that has been experienced by Bronx families and individuals. Our first event should come as no surprise to those who know our work. The first event was a water and sewer seminar held at the end of May. And that event, along with our July building operators meeting, drew 71 individuals. The building managers and developers in attendance represent over 15,000 units of housing, primarily in the Bronx. Both meetings focused on the threats to community-based or regulated affordable multifamily housing, properties that have a goal to provide decent, affordable housing to lower income tenants. Rising operating costs such as water and sewer, or the shocking rise in cost and lack of availability of insurance, as well as the boring, programmatic, and bureaucratic snags that can threaten this important source of affordable housing were discussed. Housing like this needs ongoing commitment of funds and public policy attention to remain affordable and well-maintained. At the end of July, we held our multifamily lenders meeting, which was attended by over 70 individuals representing 36 lending institutions. We've held this annual meeting for the past 11 or so years, and yet we always provide and share new relevant information about distress indicator and trends in multifamily housing. Since the start of the pandemic, UNHP has been able to build on our foundational and historic database, the Building Indicator Project, or BIP, to identify emerging trends. And it feels like this analysis is even more important as shifts in the market are emerging and concerns about distress level in buildings increases. This year, we did something a bit different and hosted a conversation between Chris Beck, the Director of Commercial Real Estate Lending for New York Community Bank, and Rajiv, the tenant attorney from Take Root, as part of the multifamily lenders meeting. There was much common ground in the discussion around well-maintained assets for both the lender and the tenant, as well as an understanding that banks working with tenants can often do more to improve building conditions than court orders alone. The Northwest Bronx Resource Center is UNHP's direct service arm and works directly with over 2,500 Bronx residents each year. We have been virtual since the pandemic, but we continue to reach many people who use our services and new folks as well. The Resource Center was involved in 3 of our What We Do events. We've been an HPD housing ambassador since 2017. And in that role, we help people seeking affordable housing apply for the New York City Affordable Housing Lottery. Which is known as Housing Connect. We posted a 2-part blog that looked at our experience with the program, as well as Bronx-based research on the new housing that's been built in the last few years, and what we perceive as the mismatch between those people who come to us for help finding affordable housing and what is being built. In August, the Resource Center reached over 50 community residents with 2 webinars, one in English and the other in Spanish, about the many new COVID relief programs. In March of 2020, we saw firsthand how when COVID hit the Bronx hard and early, that there was an increased need among the people we serve for essentials like food, and if people were elderly or vulnerable to COVID, to get a home delivery of food. Now that new resources are available, we want to make sure people know about them. New resources like the advance of the child tax credit, emergency rental assistance, and the excluded worker fund, which is for those who might not qualify for unemployment, such as undocumented immigrants, but who still saw a loss of income because of the pandemic. The work before the webinar was just as important as the follow-up. So we did extensive outreach via text and email and phone calls. During the webinar, we had a bilingual question and answer period, which was very lively and people were very engaged. And afterwards, we did, an email and call follow-up with those who needed to schedule appointments with groups who could help them with that assistance. At the very end of August, the Resource Center hosted a Bronx nonprofit exchange, which was attended by 39 people from 14 Bronx groups, or groups that serve Bronx residents, to connect, share, and discuss our expertise areas. The Resource Center is collaborative in nature. So while UNHP does provide some of the services out of the Resource Center, such as helping seniors and the disabled freeze their rent and helping folks enroll in the housing lottery, other groups provide different services. So getting together via Zoom for that exchange allowed us to have a deeper conversation about the programs that are available and the barriers that people see with those that they're working with. An additional focus of that webinar was around credit and financial empowerment, and how we can include those conversations with everyone that we serve as a way to help people address their most pressing financial concerns and move people towards financial and housing stability. So that is the overview of the 6 events. I thank you all for joining us for the 7th event, which is today. And of course, it's not our last, hurrah in terms of what we do at all. And again, I want to thank those who supported us, the sponsors and donors, all those who participated in the webinars, and all those who work with us towards our mission. Next up, you'll hear from the UNHP directors about the What We Do event that they hosted, as well as why it matters towards our mission. Brendan Mitchell, UNHP's Director of Real Estate, will share our work with other Bronx affordable housing building operators now. Thanks again.
Thank you, Cathy and Jim, for that intro. Just to echo what both of you said, we are so grateful for all of our sponsors and donors who have supported us in the past and continue to do so. I am Brendan Mitchell, and I am going to share a little bit about what we do and how we've done it over the course of the past year. It is important to remember that as many building projects took a hit financially throughout the pandemic, community-based owners and developers were faced with a unique responsibility, one which we take very seriously. It will never be an option for us to bring repairs to a halt or to backburner necessary capital improvements or emergency repairs just because rent collections have dropped. We do not have the ability to defer a water bill until collections pick up, or we'll lose our flat rate water price and our rebate credits. We can't downgrade insurance coverage because premiums have gotten too high, or drastically increase our deductible because we don't plan on making any claims. The majority of buildings in community control have regulatory agreements and require compliance with building standards as well as financial obligations, which include water payments, real estate taxes, and insurance. Building owners in the private sector, on the other hand, have a little bit more flexibility when it comes to these must-pay items. The truth is that it's significantly more expensive to run quality housing by playing by the rules than it is to carry an over-leveraged investment property along through an economic downturn. In the past months, we've held 2 meetings bringing together operators and managers of community-based housing in the Bronx. We've convened these meetings in an attempt to provide a space for like-minded building managers and operators to discuss how the pandemic has infected the buildings they work in. Community-based housing operators are always facing tight operating budgets as we prioritize keeping our apartments affordable and in good condition. Recently, we at UNHP noticed that some of our building expenses were increasing significantly, namely water and insurance. These coincided with that period of lower rent collections as tenants struggled with the economic fallout of the pandemic. Housing meetings with other community-based housing operators gave us a little bit of insight and understanding as to the issues that are facing housing providers today and what type of advocacy UNHP needs to focus on in order to protect and stabilize housing moving forward. Back in May, we hosted the first of these 2 meetings, which focused on water in multifamily buildings. This was right as the Department of Environmental Protection, which is the agency that sets the price of water and affordability programs, had recently released their budget proposal for the upcoming 2021 year. The budget, which has since been approved, called for an overall increase in the price of water, which we think is only going to stretch already taut budgets of community-based housing operators. But the budget did allocate more funds to water affordability programs, and we applaud DEP for that. We have and we will continue to push for more funding and transparency around water affordability programs, which mainly our focus is the Multifamily Water Assistance Program, which offers a $250 per unit credit to regulated units as long as they meet certain tenant income requirements. As far as transparency around the program, we would like to see DEP or HPD, the administrator, publish an award list showing where the buildings who received the credit are located and how many buildings applied for the credit that should have gotten it that were not able to because the funds ran out. It's important that we continue to push DEP to increase funding to these programs so that affordable housing providers get the water subsidy that's needed. In mid-July, we hosted our second event with building operators in an effort to provide a place to discuss additional difficulties people have been facing. We opened up the discussion on a number of issues like insurance, rental assistance program, marketing, leasing through Housing Connect, vacancy rates, homeless rentals. These are some of the hurdles that we are dealing with as a housing operator, and we assumed that others are as well. We've been working at UNHP to collect and analyze insurance data from many of the groups that joined us. And after quite a bit of collection and analysis, there's really only a few things that we know about insurance. One, that the cost of property and liability insurance is up anywhere from 10 to 50%, that's 50, across all 5 boroughs. We know that there's a severe lack of carrier options for multifamily housing contractors, property managers, and in most cases, groups cannot even get more than one quote. We know that umbrella policies, which provide additional coverage over the normal limits of liability policies and are required by most city and state lenders, are further driving up the cost of insurance across portfolios. And we know that high rent properties can afford to pay higher insurance premiums and affordable housing cannot. We also discussed the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, which is currently accepting applications for rent relief from tenants and landlords. Since the rollout of the ERAP program by the New York State Office of Temporary Disability Assistance, UNHP is engaged in a proactive marketing campaign directed towards residents in our buildings who may have fallen behind on rent throughout the pandemic. We are dedicated to recouping the back rent through this program, as we know it will allow for families to stay in place, and it will provide some relief to the community-controlled buildings, which we oversee. It was really, really great to hear from other mission-driven organizations, both for-profit and non-for-profit, as we all try to figure out the application process for ERAP. And to date, we count on those partners to let us know whether money is coming in, whether it's not, what some of the application problems are. To date, we've received applications from 13% of our residents in our rent stabilized portfolio, and which amounts to about $160,000 worth of ERAP funds. We're continuing to get the word out to our buildings through flyers and letters and informational sessions outside the buildings. We're trying to encourage anybody who's fallen behind over the last 18 months to apply. We also discussed the New York City Housing Lottery and the placement of homeless families through HPD, which is required in newly regulated housing. Back in December, we re-entered into a regulatory agreement with HPD on a group of 10 of our buildings, collectively known as Reclaim HDH. In line,
6 o'clock. Windy, only 1 hour.
In line with HPD's new requirements, we must now fill vacancies in these buildings through the Housing Connect lottery. This process has been difficult for us for a number of reasons. For starters, the loss of rent on vacant units while beginning the lottery process can be a huge financial hit. These are buildings which typically have very low vacancy loss, and quality affordable units are hard to come by in the Bronx, so people do not typically move out. In our meeting, we learned that other groups who are either working towards a closing or have recently closed are or will soon be in the same boat. Other owners and managers shared experience, feedback, and similar frustrations, and we ultimately hope to bring our comments back to HPD for further discussion so that we can refine this new requirement. It's been our community partners, like those who joined us for the managers meeting, which have helped guide us through the last 18 months. The roundtable received many requests for follow-up and was clearly helpful for everybody involved. We hope to make it a regular occurrence so that like-minded affordable housing operators have a chance to pool knowledge, share experiences, and help one another achieve our common goal of providing safe and affordable housing in the Bronx. And with that, I thank you for listening, and I'm going to hand it over to Jacob, who's going to talk a little bit about his research on the importance of banks, the common ground between lenders and tenant advocates, and the CRA. Jacob?
Great, thanks, Brendan. Hi, everyone. I'm Jacob Udell, and I head up our research and data work at UNHP. It's good to see everyone here today. So this is a nice opportunity to reflect as a group and in public, kind of on why we focus, so much on multifamily finance in our research and data work. Right, the way that multifamily finance is connected to building conditions and tenant outcomes isn't something that is really talked about among advocates and community-based organizations. And it's not always obvious to everyone what that connection is. So it's nice to sort of, take a step back and reflect, especially after these last few years. So the first thing to say is that throughout UNHP's history, we've always returned, to finance and the role of lenders in all of our work, but especially as a really key part of ensuring good outcomes in the housing stock in the Bronx and citywide. And I think in the few years that I've been involved, I've really become convinced that that focus is just as important as ever. So as we often show through that long-term chart of Bronx multifamily prices over more than 3 decades, that I'm sure lots of you have seen, right? Values in rent stabilized real estate have moved way higher than anyone at UNHP could have imagined even a decade ago, not to mention over our 35-year history. And the question of how those movements affect building conditions and tenants is particularly relevant right now, as the market is arguably more unusual than it's been in a really long time. So I won't go into my whole spiel, but just briefly, right, prices for New York City multifamily housing, unlike most other real estate in the US, have dropped substantially over the past year or two. No one's really buying or selling much. Rental income has obviously taken a huge hit, as Brendan described, right? But distress, at least at this point, hasn't really shown up in serious ways. Right now, as I've said before, there are still more questions than answers on that front. And I promise to stop saying that at some point, but I still have to say it for a little bit longer, I think. But in the context of this moment, I find myself, more and more talking about the role of banks, right? So lenders, in my opinion, are better seen as business partners in the sort of, New York City multifamily housing market. And in an environment where debt levels on buildings are quite high and where there's just so much uncertainty about the future of particularly the rent stabilized multifamily subsector, right, banks are a business partner that is really key in determining how all of this is going to play out. And because of that, we often say that banks need to think of themselves as, active stakeholders in ensuring, right, good outcomes on a building level and for tenants, right, for the maintenance of safe, stable, and affordable housing. And on that front, it's worth saying that I think there's been significant progress, I think largely due to conversations around BIP, around the Building Indicator Project, right, with people on this call right now and others and the work done following the 2008 crisis. I think banks are more open to a tenant or advocate or community-based perspective than ever. Just during the pandemic, we've had really productive dialogue with multiple banks as well as bank regulators on their role in multifamily housing that, from what I understand, I wasn't around, I don't think we could have done a few years ago. And that really brings us back to the event that I helped organize, in which we brought together 2 participants, Chris Beck and Rajiv Jaswa, right? So on the one hand, at New York Community Bank, Chris has really been a big force in helping bring tenant perspectives to one of the largest lenders in rent stabilized housing. And Rajiv, on the other hand, is someone who spends his days really battling, negligent landlords in court on behalf of tenants, and who knows pretty deeply, on some level better than most, how banks can look the other way or be complicit sometimes when predatory behavior arises. Right, but despite that, and despite their different starting points, I think they came together and had a conversation that really did reflect shared ground about how banks can see themselves as active stakeholders, and the way in which lender interests can even align with tenant goals when it comes to multifamily housing. So yeah, Chris made a point that just wanted to reiterate that from a business perspective, it's important. Important that banks know more about their collateral, and being in touch with tenants who experience living in that collateral every day isn't only a responsibility that banks have, but it also helps them do that. It helps them sort of understand more about who and what they're lending to. And I think that was a really great conversation. All that being said, there are clear limits to these sorts of productive conversations. So often we hit roadblocks in terms of how banks can or want to intervene when issues arise in rent stabilized housing. And I think in this crucial moment, we're really thinking a lot about how to push lenders even further, again, for the benefits of tenants and of building conditions. And beyond that, we're also thinking about what's needed to anticipate issues that may arise in the coming months and years after, again, such a hard, almost coming up in 2 years of COVID, but even longer if you're looking at like these changes in the multifamily market that I'm describing. So a few thoughts on that as a way to think about what we're focusing on in the coming months and years. So the big thing I wanted to talk about was the need to think about what the obligations are of lenders to their multifamily housing stock in the context of the Community Reinvestment Act, or CRA. Right, so CRA is also something that UNHP has long been involved in. And in my opinion, we're kind of at a point where CRA and multifamily housing requires a pretty big rethink. So yeah, CRA and multifamily in my mind is different than other parts of CRA, right? So for a financial product or a home loan, when credit is provided to a low-income Black or brown or otherwise marginalized household, there is a direct benefit, right? Access to credit is actually directly benefiting the person or people that we want to benefit. But in rental housing, the CRA outcome that we care about is, kind of 1 degree removed, right? The loan goes to the landlord, but we care first and foremost that the loan ensures that tenants can live safely, affordably, and stably. And our analysis is that, right, for a multifamily building, there isn't any necessary connection between, say, a refinance that provides a higher debt level or a lower interest rate and those outcomes that we want for tenants. And that's a problem. So, right, currently it seems that the threshold for CRA multifamily lending is more or less a bank providing a loan to a multifamily building that's in a low to moderate income census tract, like many of our neighborhoods in the Bronx are. But given how I've just described and how a lot of us know how multifamily lending works, I think we need to go farther than that, right? So, together with other partners across the city, we're really looking at what we would expect ideally from lenders and CRA examiners when it comes to CRA and multifamily. So we're thinking about things like CRA downgrades if multifamily lending, by a particular bank leads to harm. We're thinking about, banks being forced to do proactive monitoring of things like harassment and physical conditions over the life of the loans that they provide, right? Particularly in buildings with risks of predatory landlord behavior. We're also thinking about how banks can put particular attention on expense levels, especially now that there's a threat of disinvestment after the last few years. We know that so many high building valuations and the loans associated with them can often be underwritten in a way that assumes really low expense levels on buildings that sorely need work, and especially in our neighborhoods in the Bronx with long neglected buildings, that is an area that we're really paying close attention to. So all told, right, the CRA is still the way that banks come to the table, and CRA regulation needs to encourage lenders to keep moving closer, to what we mean when we say active stakeholders. So that's a big area of focus for ours, and it's done with people on this call, neighborhood organizations in the Bronx, UNHP as a coalition, lots of other groups, but it's going to be an area of focus of ours, again, based on that sort of larger analysis of where the multifamily market is. It's also worth saying that we have to think beyond this as well, right? So when I say those sorts of things to bank reps or bank regulators, often the response to those sorts of comments is on the part of a bank, on the part of a lender, is we can't be responsible for everything. And in many ways, they're right about that. We have to all come together, all of the stakeholders across multifamily housing, from tenants to owners to lenders to other investors, right, to try to make sure that, especially in these coming years, that the rent stabilized housing stock that still is the most important piece of affordable housing in the Bronx and in our city is stabilized. Again, if we're correct about these next few years, we're entering an environment that is going to be harder for both tenants and for owners and managers who are trying to do right by those tenants, as Brandon was describing, just a few minutes ago. And the question is, how do we continue to anticipate what might happen, right, based on our understanding of the housing market and the housing stock, and think about research and policy goals that fit the current moment. So some things we're thinking about, by no means exhaustive. I think the first thing is how to give tenants and tenant associations stronger tools to fight against substandard conditions that might come up in the next few years. So for that, we're really working on ideas around 7A administrative reforms and other code enforcement ideas. We're also thinking about how to create an ecosystem to encourage nonprofit operators, nonprofit operators and responsible private owners to really be in a position to fill the vacuum by acquiring buildings and intervening in buildings as New York City rent stabilized housing, potentially becomes less profitable. And we're also thinking about how to think about all the state and federal money that has come to help low-income households over the past year, talking about rent relief, unemployment benefits, which you'll hear more about in a few minutes, and also the unprecedented federal funds that are being talked about right now that may or may not be coming to support housing development and operations, housing vouchers and rental assistance and all that. It's kind of an exciting moment. It's exciting, but it's also kind of daunting. I feel lucky to be in a position to continue, thinking about these things. But I think most importantly, I'm also grateful to be at an organization with people who have different sets of expertise on all these topics, at an organization that is able to connect with all the people on this call with all of your various expertise. I know that there are at least a few people on the call who I've bugged incessantly about various legal or policy or history things that are important to our work. And I also feel grateful to be situated with sort of a local and Bronx focus where, we get to figure out how all this is happening in real time by sort of watching it and understanding it and trying to anticipate and be nimble, as Cathy said at the beginning. So I think that's a good transition to hearing a little bit about our resource center. So I'm going to pass it over to Jumelia to talk about that.
Thank you, Jacob. And hello, everyone. And thank you for reflecting with us and sitting down and having this not as fun conversation, but it's something that we need to know. We've been in this pandemic for some time, and we're still having Zoom issues, and we're still having all these other issues. So how can we deal with them in a quick manner to best reach our mission individually? So thank you for joining this conversation that is part of the final event. And thank you for supporting This Is What We Do effort now and with your presence or with your donation. So we certainly appreciate both. Again, I'm Jumelia Abrahamson, Director of Programs at UNHP. And for almost 10 years now, we have offered a range of housing and financial services from our Northwest Bronx Research Center, with the ultimate goal of increasing stability and bringing resources as an alternative to predatory services. During this time, UNHP has remained a trusted neighborhood ally, and the community has come to rely on us for tax preparation, housing assistance, and honest local referrals. At this time, our Bronx community is still facing increased need as a result of the pandemic. The Bronx was the borough with the most COVID cases in New York City. We understand that the basis of financial stability is secure housing. And there's many households that we serve that continue with overcrowded apartments, high rent, and little to no disposable income, because even though many of our research centers are essential workers, often the wages they make are not livable. So that poses many problems. That means that after paying the rent, many households are struggling to cover other basic necessities, such as food and childcare. Another piece of financial stability is access to banks, instead of alternative financial services like check cashers and pawn shop. During this time of increased uncertainty, many banks have closed in the Bronx. And as you walk through many of our neighborhoods, you see long lines at the few local branches and ATMs. The lack of access to financial institutions makes receiving unemployment benefits, stimulus payments, advanced child tax credit, and any other government aid so difficult to reach those that need it the most. In the face of all these challenges, often simultaneous threat threats that are the families we serve are dealing with, the Research Center has had to adapt in order to continue helping households achieve that financial stability that I'm going to talk a little bit more as to like what that means on the local level. Of course, this varies for each individual families and certainly is not prescriptive, is not one solution that's going to work for every family we serve. For some, it means opening a bank account, their first account. It means reducing costly fees at the check casher or even with their current banking products that they currently use. Having a strong credit score or filing income taxes on a yearly basis. So there's no fees and penalties that are accruing. And as we've experienced, and I'm sure you've experienced yourself, in response to the pandemic, many new government programs were released, but it was confusing to know when they were going to open, who can apply, should we roll this out now, how to prepare. And just as we were confused, a big part of our work has been to research these opportunities so we can make it relatable to the Bronx families that we're helping and the one that can benefit from these programs. So despite not being perfect, the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, also known as ERAP, and the Excluded Workers Fund bring much needed help to Bronx residents. These programs attempt to address rental arrears and provide unemployment benefits to undocumented individuals and others who were previously excluded from receiving unemployment benefits. However, they are not perfect, as I mentioned before. The application process are rather involved. A lot of our energy has been put towards getting the word out and making sure that we're helping people navigate this very confusing process. As Brendan mentioned before, we have done a lot of work to help tenants in our building apply for rental assistance. Duggar Management, which oversees many of the UNHP portfolio, has been a key player in making this possible. Many tenants also have scheduled, after these conversations where we've been able to go into the buildings, many of the tenants have been able to schedule appointments directly with us, or we've made referrals to local partners for in-person assistance. The responsiveness of our team was key in adapting to this new demand, especially as we continue to figure out how to work remotely. So I want to shout out the team. So Laura, Jadida, Preston, Ellie, Heather, Anna, and our amazing volunteers. You've made it possible for us to be able to understand these many programs and get it out into the community in a quickly and effective way. So thank you for that. The supers in the buildings provided a lot of support as well. When it came to in-person outreach by distributing the printed materials, letting tenants know about the program. We needed to contact tenants in multiple buildings and learn the criteria and then simplify this process for them so people were comfortable enough to either apply on their own or even comfortable enough to ask for help. So the fact that we have the community that trusts us and knows that they can come to rely on us for this direction, it's something that we don't take lightly either. With our tax program, we have made a huge push to get individuals to apply for the Excluded Workers Fund. This has meant identifying who may be eligible for the program, getting in touch with them prior to the applications opening up so they can begin gathering the numerous paperwork that they were going to have to collect, and answering questions about the program as well as addressing any concerns that have arisen, especially with our undocumented folks, like if that's going to affect their immigration status or their ability to adjust their status in the future. We have also been working with other Bronx groups to help individuals who we have not filed taxes before and making sure that they can connect with a live person And that referral is smooth by giving them a name, a number, and a clear process as to like how they can move forward. All of this has been made possible by our continued effort to improve our data collection. So we've been able to work on our database, making sure that we have the right emails, the phone numbers. We're engaging people in the preferred language. So it's been a huge undertaking, but it's helped us identify when someone needs immediate relief, and then making the connections with the other programs that are going to bring them that financial stability and housing stability that we want at the end. So what do we do now that we know all this? How do we move forward? So in the next month, we want to continue to engage with tenants in our building. We want to continue communicating with research center users effectively. And we want to help participants continue to move forward with financial it's really their choice, housing stability goals. And one way we commit to doing this is by launching a monthly bilingual Ask UNHP session, which is going to be on Zoom and over the phone. And this will hopefully allow us to remain flexible and proactively address gaps as they arise in our community. So we want to make sure that not only are we having these conversations with all of you today, but that we can continue having these conversations despite the limitations of Zoom with our clients in a consistent base. The transition to remote work has also forced us to reevaluate our game plan and how to interact with research center users. So we realize the importance of empowering our community members to become ambassadors within the community to get the word out and outreach and promote these services. We will never be able to help everyone one-on-one. However, we can help distribute accurate information, which can then be spread across the neighborhood. For example, households that have worked with us around Housing Connect, unless they created a new profile on the new account, haven't been able to apply to these new lotteries that are available. It will be challenging for us and other housing ambassadors to transition every applicant to the new website due to our own limitations. But we can teach some of these apartment seekers to navigate the new portal so that they can then help others in their research for an affordable apartment. So we want people to graduate from these programs and actually do more. And as I wrap it up, we want to make sure that we elevate some of these big takeaways from these last few events, where we've been able to work with other Bronx groups together, similar to how the 3 different arms of UNHP came together during this conversation. We want to make sure that these conversations continue to happen more broadly throughout the Bronx. So at the Research Center, we can only accomplish so much on our own. Talking with other groups who are focused on providing resources to Bronxites allows us to serve the community at large. We are able to share knowledge and expertise with other providers, as well as refer clients to organizations that may be able to help them right away. The programs I've mentioned weren't around before, but the pandemic created many new demands. And as nonprofit, I feel that we operate sometimes in a mindset that we have to do more with less. But if we come together as a community and as a large network that we are, we can do more and more by not doing it all of ourselves. So at UNHP, as part of This Is What We Do, we wanted to communicate that Bronx groups can achieve more when they collaborate with one another. So I wanted to also shout out our partners. So thank you, Fordham Bedford Community Service, POTS, Arriva, Neighborhood Trust, our volunteers from Manhattan College and Fordham University, ANHD, and Ridgewood Savings Bank, which after multiple conversations with us, listened to the need of keeping the Sedgwick branch open. This was monumental for the community, and this is one way that we can make sure that residents are utilizing banking products, building credit, utilizing emergency funds, and that we can recover together. So thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. And I'll pass it on to Jim for our toast. So we're almost there at the finish line.
Wow. Let's see. Let me make sure I've unmuted myself here. My phone is telling me, can people hear me? Okay. That was great. Thank you guys for presenting. There's a lot there, I was sitting here trying to connect the dots here, and in terms of the different things that people are talking about, but I'm not sure that I really have anything dramatically different than what I was saying at the beginning. The pieces that work for us, are the fact that the three different types of things that we're doing kind of inform each other, and we develop an agenda off of that. Somebody was saying to me recently that the written documentation that went with this this series of sessions that we have had, one of the reasons that they've enjoyed it is they felt that it was extremely clear and simply stated, and I think that has a lot to do with the energy and the drive of the people that you just saw, and the people that they referenced. I think I said this at the beginning. I've been doing this. I've been with UNHP since 1989. Prior to that, I worked for the coalition. I recognize a number of faces on this call, or names if the faces aren't shown here, and I know there are a number of people on the call that have been doing it similar lengths of time, in some cases maybe even longer. And I think the inspiration that kind of keeps people like us going is, we just saw the people that are stepping up to the plate, the neighborhood people that are getting involved in different things, the people from the financial institutions that that are talking to us and helping us to try to devise solutions on things. The private managers that we're working with that are working with us as well to try to make sure that that the assistance that we need, for the people in our buildings and the tenants in our buildings are getting out there, and the staff and volunteers that we're talking about. But also, I especially just want to point out that in order to keep doing this, you find inspiration in different places. So I find it and have found it from the beginning in the board and leadership of UNHP, the staff of UNHP. From the very beginning, the staff of UNHP has really been a team of all-stars. The Alumni Association of UNHP is a pretty damned impressive one. And I got to say, the staff that we have right now rival any team that we ever had here at UNHP. And it's because of that type of energy and insight that I'm filled with hope while we confront some of the most serious problems that perhaps we've ever confronted in the Bronx. And our history indicates that we can do this. We can make it happen. The energy that you just saw, the energy that we're kind of seeing from people, that have just spoken. I think this is these are problems that can be addressed, and the way that we're talking about addressing them is the way we've approached the problems from the beginning. Getting people together, getting people to talk to each other about the common ground, not always agreeing. Some of you well know that that we have an edge to us when we need to have an edge to us on things, and we are willing to engage if we need to, but we've got people that are interested in trying to make the right thing happen. And when you've got that kind of drive and that kind of inspiration and that kind of faith, I firmly believe that we can kind of keep doing the good work that's being described here. I said at the beginning, we don't have solutions for everything, and obviously we don't. But we do have the will, the strength, and the capacity to kind of bring people together to keep doing more. I think I probably talked more than I was supposed to talk. And I'm just taking a peek here in the chat to see if, oh, I'm seeing some very nice things in the chat. Staff versus alumni softball game. That's got possibilities. We'll follow that up offline.
Staff calls Jack Buckley for our team.
That's right. Yes, yes. Although Jack might qualify as an alumni too, I'm not sure. So, all right. All right. I think I'm looking at the clock here. We're about a few minutes after 5. If we don't have anything additional, what I wanted to do, as we have done at all of our events, when we were doing them at the Bronx Beer Hall, our board member and the executive director of Fordham Bedford Community Services, John Garcia, has always brought us to a conclusion. And I would like to ask John to do that again. There we go. Hey, John.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Jim. I see a lot of smiling faces. It's not Friday yet, but come on, let's get some energy going in the room. A lot of information. I know that today's event was called What We Do, and I'm listening to all the speakers and all the great information, some of it not so great. A lot of it does bring home the fact that the Bronx needs organizations like UNHP now more than ever. But one of the things I'm proudest to be a part of UNHP is not only what we do, but why they do it and for who they do it. They really represent a lot of people who don't have a voice. They really try to bring home so many issues that affect our community. And I say our community because Jim, still lives in the community. I live in the community. And a lot of what they do is a lot of the catchphrase now is talk truth to power. I'm very proud that UNHP talks sense to power. They try to get the people who make the decisions to see our point of view, which is grounded in the fact that we are working day in and day out with the people that their decisions and their policies affect. So, I'm very proud of the fact that they've assembled a great team. I'm very happy to be part of that team, not on the day-to-day, but, as a board member, and keep doing what you're doing. A lot of the key words that I heard was resistance, following up, they're nimble. So maybe at the softball game, we'll see how nimble they are. But, we usually raise a glass, and if you haven't received it, this is what this year looks like. It's wonderful, it's beautiful. Thank you for donating. I know that they're over 75,000, maybe close to 80,000, right? Which is amazing. Every year that they've done this, they keep going higher and higher. So we appreciate all of your support. But I'm speaking on behalf of the community that UNHP serves. And we are really indebted to your organization and your staff. And the why has a lot to do with the leadership. Someone did write that. I think it was Greg. The leadership definitely has the best interests of our community at heart. So kudos to UNHP, its leadership, its staff, and I'm just happy that you guys let me, tag along for the ride. Cheers to you.
All right.
Cheers to walk.
Is all right. Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much for participating. And if you need, you all know how to get in touch with us, so shoot us an email if you want to follow up. We will definitely be shooting you an email as we follow up on the things that we're working on. So thanks again. Thanks everybody for participating. And with this, I'm going to call us to an end.